Welcome to Learn to Crochet with MyntKat. Today is lesson 4 and I would like to review the stitches that I've showed you so far and give you some more information so you can get started with crocheting. So the first stitch we learned was the chain stitch, and in patterns it will usually be abbreviated CH, and if you have a crochet chart the symbol for it is a circle. That is the chain stitch, and that is what we usually use to make a foundation for a work. So you yarn over and pull your yarn through the loop. That is the chain stitch. And I will make 6 of these to have a little foundation to show you the other stitches with again. The second stitch I showed you was the single crochet stitch. Now I'll mention it again, these are the American terms for stitches. The British terms are different. So these are the American terms. Just when you get a pattern, just make sure that it mentions what kind of stitches these are. Either it'll have the stitch explanations written out or it'll mention American or British. So these are the American terms. The single crochet stitch is abbreviated SC in patterns for single crochet. And in a chart, it will either be marked with a cross or an X. Both of these are commonly used, so they both mean the same thing, single crochet stitch. And again, the way the single crochet stitch worked is you insert your hook, yarn over, pull through, so you have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through both. That is a single crochet stitch. Insert the hook, yarn over, pull a loop, 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through both. That is the single crochet stitch. The next stitch I showed you was the half double stitch. Half double stitch in patterns will be abbreviated HDC, and in charts it will be a little T that signifies this stitch. So the way we did this was yarn over, so your yarn runs over your hook, insert your hook in your stitch, yarn over and pull a loop, 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 3. That is the half double crochet stitch. And again, I'm making 5 of these just to make all stitches on this little test swatch again. That's a line of half double crochet stitches. The next stitch we looked at was the double crochet stitch. In patterns it will be abbreviated DC, and in a chart it'll be a little T with another little dash through it. The dash stands for the yarn over that you do. So you yarn over, so your yarn runs over your hook, insert hook in your stitch, pull a loop, 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through the first 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through both. That is the double crochet stitch. And then the largest basic stitch we looked at was the triple or treble crochet. It can be called both. It's abbreviated TR, and the symbol for it is a T with 2 dashes in it, which stand for the 2 yarn overs that you do before making the stitch. So you yarn over again, the yarn runs over your hook twice, insert your hook in your stitch, pull a loop, 4 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through the first 2, yarn over, pull through the next 2, yarn over, pull through the last 2. This is the triple or treble crochet stitch. And these are the basic stitches that you will need for most patterns. There are a lot of other stitches that can be made up of these, and there are a couple that also work differently, but they all work on the same principles. I will show you a couple other stitches over the course of this tutorial, but for now we're going to stick with these basic stitches because they already give us a lot of options to work with. Another stitch that is very basic and very commonly used is the slip stitch. The slip stitch is abbreviated SL, and in a chart it'll be this little dot, and it's commonly used for edging, just making a nice edge on a piece, or for joining pieces. And the way it works is basically like a chain stitch but through another stitch. So you insert your hook and then just pull your yarn through the stitch and through the loop. So you have one loop on your hook, insert it in the stitch, yarn over and pull through the stitch and the loop. This is the slip stitch. And as you can see, it kind of falls to the front, so it's not on the top where the stitch is, but it falls to the front, so it makes a nice edge on crochet works. And it can also be used if you want to join pieces. If you're working in the round, for example, you would just take your hook, insert it in the stitch you want to join with, and then make a slip stitch right there. And it would join your pieces together, just like this. I'll open this again. And to fasten off your work when you're done, to make sure it doesn't unravel once you're done, what you do for fastening off is you just do a chain stitch, then cut off your yarn and pull it through. And then you can just pull this tail and your chain stitch will get very small and a tight little knot, and you've secured your work and it won't open again. That's how you fasten off your work piece. So again, to review, all the stitches we've learned so far are the chain stitch, which has this circle as a symbol, single crochet, which is a cross or an X, half double crochet, which is a T, double crochet, a T with a dash, triple crochet, a T with two dashes, and the slip stitch, which is a dot. So these are the basic stitches that you will need for most patterns. And another thing I want to talk about today is working to gauge. So as I've explained to you in the first video, most yarns and patterns come with a gauge. Like this one tells you, I'm not sure if you can see it, it's very small, to use a 5mm hook, which is this, with this yarn, and to work 13 single crochet and 14 rows to get a work piece of 10 by 10 centimeters or 4 by 4 inches. So this is the gauge provided by the yarn. A pattern that is worked to size, like anything that needs to fit a certain size, will also come with a gauge that will tell you the number of stitches, the yarn, and the hook, and you should always work up a gauge swatch to see if you're actually working to gauge. So the difference different hooks make is the size of the piece that you get out. This is a piece that I worked with a 4mm hook and a worsted weight yarn. This is 10 single crochet by 6 rows. I worked the same yarn with a 3mm hook, this one, which you can see is definitely smaller. And this is again 10 stitches and 6 rows, so the same amount of stitches, the same stitches with a different hook, and it came out quite a bit smaller. I also worked the same yarn with a really large 10mm hook. So you can see it's really big, so the work piece comes out very big and lofty. It also comes out a lot more stretchy than the other pieces, because the bigger the holes between your stitches are, the stretchier your work piece will be. This one with a 4mm hook is just a little stretchy, and the 3mm hook is almost not stretchy at all. So again, this was 10 single crochet stitches by 6 rows. So all these pieces are the same yarn, the same amount of stitches, just different hooks used. So that is why your gauge will provide a certain size of hook. Another thing that is important when working to gauge is to watch your tension. Your tension is how you hold your working yarn. So as I told you before, I wrap it around my finger like this. So I have a medium tension. If I would wrap it around my finger 2 or 3 times, it would be a much tighter tension because the yarn would have a much harder time running through my fingers. If I wouldn't run it through my fingers at all, but just hold it like this, it would be a very loose tension. And the difference this makes is again in the size of the piece that you get out. This is a piece that I worked with very loose tension. It is 10 single crochet stitches by 3 rows and a very loose tension on a 4mm hook. On the same hook I worked with medium tension, my regular tension. This is again 10 stitches by 3 rows. But you can see the size is quite different. So it was the same hook, same yarn, just a different tension. I also worked a piece with very, very tight tension. I just wrapped the yarn around my finger a couple times and held on to it really tightly. And again, this was the same hook, the same yarn, same amount of stitches, and it comes out quite a bit smaller. So you want to watch your tension while you're working because this can change from day to day. If you're really stressed out, for example, you will clench your yarn much tighter. You'll really hold on to it and you'll end up with a much tighter tension. If you're really tired or really relaxed, you might not hold on to it very tightly at all and you'll end up with a much looser tension like this one. Try to stick with medium tension and try to check while you're working on a piece whether your tension has changed at all, because if you start like a large sweater and you start with medium tension and then one day when you work on it you're really stressed and you have a very tight tension and the next day you're really tired and you have a very loose tension, it might just come out wonky or wobbly. So tension is very important, that you'll keep the same tension, whatever tension that is. There are some crocheters that just naturally have a very tight tension, so they know to use a larger hook than the pattern recommends. They just do their test swatch with a larger hook and see what hook they need to use. Or if you're a very loose crocheter, you will use a smaller hook than your pattern recommends. So if you work anything to size, definitely always make a test swatch to see if you are on track, if you are working to gauge, because you want it to work out to the right size and not bigger or smaller than recommended. Alright, so that was our review of the stitches and some more information on how to crochet and what to watch for, like tension and hook sizes. And next week I would like to show you how to make an actual crochet piece, and it will be this dishcloth, which again will review all of the stitches we have learned, and we'll just practice these stitches by making a nice little dishcloth. Alright, I hope I'll see you again next week, and thanks for joining me.